Welcome to Consumer Law, What Is It Good For? The series where we look at, consider and try to answer frequently asked questions that come to us at Storm Capture Law through our free advice helpline and from clients. And today's question comes from Andy. And Andy says, I have received a recall notice for my Porsche Taycan telling me my car has potential fire risk and I can't charge it more than 80% and there's no current fix. What are my rights? And we've had similar questions in from owners of the Audi e-tron. So by way of some background, the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron GT are both fully electric sports cars and they share materially the same architecture. In short, both cars are built on the same platform, with the Porsche Taycan starting in production in 2019 and the Audi e-tron in 2021. Now, since its launch, the Taycan has been the subject of much criticism, mainly in relation to software issues, electrical issues, and recalls, and of course, more recently, the significant depreciation they've suffered over the past few years. Now, Andy has pretty much got a full house in terms of problems that he's had with this car from new. They include, I'll read the list, the VR 19.01 software update, the Porsche Control Management or PCM fault, and that controls the communication, navigation and standard vehicle functions, the Porsche Stability Management System. He's had problems with the Thermal Management Control Unit, and more recently, following in October 2024, the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Association in the United States, issued Recall 573, which related to the safety recall ARB6 and ARB7. And that was issued in relation to all Taycans built from October 2019 through to February 2024. And it's exactly the same recall that has been issued here in the United Kingdom. And the recall notice explains certain Taycan high voltage batteries may experience short circuits within the battery modules, which can lead to thermal events and in some cases fire. The UK recall notice advises owners not to charge their vehicles more than 80% and not to charge them undercover and not adjacent to or under buildings, which makes it pretty difficult to use the car full stop, I should think. And Andy, along with many others, simply want rid of those cars. Now, the legal position is complicated, and I'll explain why. So this is going to be absolutely case-specific, solely about Andy's car. There will be some similarities with other cases, but you will need to call in to get bespoke legal advice. But Andy bought his Taycan new by way of a hire purchase agreement with Porsche Financial Services. So there are potentially regulatory issues here. This may include the mis-selling of the finance agreement and or the mis-selling of the car itself, which also may extend to misrepresentation. And there's, of course, potentially a breach of contract. There are a number of different issues here. The difficulty is, firstly, in ascertaining what, if anything, the supplying dealership, which in this case was a Porsche main dealer, knew about the issues with this battery before Andy bought it. Now, it is fair to say there's been a lot of these recalls I've just said, and there was a recall issued in the United States also under Recall 573, which related to the charging cable, if memory serves. So there's some history about the problems that this car has had with the high voltage battery and the way it charges. Whether or not there was knowledge of that before Andy bought it is difficult to say. But if they did, if the Porsche dealership and Porsche GB knew about these problems before Andy bought it, then there would be some grounds for a mis-selling claim. In this case, there is knowledge to some extent, and we can glean this by way of an email that comes from the Porsche dealership, which I'll read, and it says, this is to Andy, following his complaint. The Taycan is brilliant. It pushes the boundaries of technology and performance for an electric vehicle, and as such requires constant enhancements to maximize its performance, similar to the software updates on a smartphone. Now, for me, there is definitely a case where the supplying dealer, in saying that, was fully aware at the time that this vehicle was sold there were going to be potentially on the horizons a number of different issues. They'd already had some software updates. To excuse it as similar to the sorts of updates that you might have on a smartphone, well, to be perfectly honest, I can't really think of any that I've had on mine, although I'm not a big updater. So I'm not really sure that helps in terms of any excuse. And it does start to give you an idea that perhaps the Taycan, like other electric vehicles, I have to say, was a little bit of a work in progress. And perhaps it was launched a bit prematurely without full research into the battery suppliers, which in this case is LG, and other components. But whatever happens, there is a breach of contract claim, specifically in Andy's case because of the finance. Now, Andy had been in possession of the car for about 18 months. So first, how can the Consumer Rights Act help him when he appears to be a year outside the 6-month period of the Consumer Rights Act? How it helps him is because the clues in the wording, that's to say that the implied terms of contract stay in the contract as long as the contract lasts. So in Andy's case, he had a 5-year, 60-month finance agreement. So those implied terms subsist for that period. The rights that are in the Consumer Rights Act, however, don't. But in this particular case, it is implicit that the problems that Anne is having with this car are inherent. They weren't necessarily known about by Porsche at the time, but they absolutely knew about them. So therefore, there is, we can argue quite easily that these problems existed from delivery. So that's going to make it quite easy as far as that's concerned. But regardless of that, we do have to consider in general terms, first, in light of the safety recall, is the car safe? Apparently, it's got a fire risk and you can't charge it outside your house or undercover in your garage or your carport. So that's going to be quite difficult as far as that's concerned. And I did have a case in this regard involving a Mercedes-Benz SL that requires a trickle charger. It's not an electric car at all, but the advent of the trickle charger was part of a recall, which didn't occur till after the vehicle was bought. And once the recall did come out, the chap just couldn't use the car because he didn't have the facilities to keep it constantly charged in. So there will be other people like this. And I did have a call from someone who lives a few doors down the road from someone with a Taycan that phoned up and said, is there anything I can do to stop this person using it? Because if his car goes up in smoke, so does my house. You get the idea. So clearly there's some issues about safety. Clearly this is not any longer the car that Andy bargained for. He had some extras put in the car. He's got a bigger battery in there, a bigger motor. He's got bigger range. There's lots of things about this car that's very specific to him. And now that's reduced so he can only get 80% of it. So it's quite a significant issue as far as that's concerned. From this perspective, given that there's not a current fix and he has got significantly reduced use of the vehicle, let alone the difficulty in charging it, let alone the difficulty in potentially charging the vehicle anywhere near fuel stations and so on and so forth, in my view, Andy's had a pretty tough time. He has been offered some compensation, track days out, lots of inducements to keep him happy, but he is absolutely at the end of this tether, and this is really the final straw. So having looked at this thing from the beginning to where we are now, I generally think that he is entitled to reject the car, and I definitely think that this case has caused him significant amounts of stress and anxiety, and that Volkswagen Financial Services should allow him to reject the car and the finance agreement be unwound. I hope this has been some help. If you have any questions, please send them in. If you need some bespoke legal advice about your Porsche Taycan or your Audi e-tron GT or any electric vehicle, please give us a call on 0333 700 7676 or email us at knowledge@stormcatcher.co.uk.